To explain why I'm running for Caddo Parish Sheriff, I have to go back to at least 1989 when it was put on my heart to become the Sheriff of Caddo Parish. I was only 24 years old and had no experience, so it was recommended that I go to work at the Sheriff's office and get some experience and get some age on me. So in 1990, I applied to go work at the Sheriff's office, and during my interview for the Sheriff's office, they asked me what I wanted to do at the Sheriff's office. I explained to them that I would like to be on patrol, work in K-9, work on narcotics, be on the SWAT team, and one day I would like to be sheriff. So everybody in the meeting pretty much told me that not everybody can do those things, and I explained to them that I understood that and that one day I would do all those things. So I got hired in 1990 as a deputy at the jail. I worked at the jail. I was on the emergency response team at the jail. I helped with the transition team from going from the new jail, from the old jail to the new jail. I also was a training officer at the jail. And from the jail, I got to transfer to patrol. And while on patrol, I worked both North and South Caddo Parish. I got to go work at SRT while I was at the jail, and I stayed on SRT through my time on patrol until I went to narcotics as an investigator, and I was a narcotics investigators on SRT at that time. From there, I went back to patrol and worked South Caddo Parish. Then I spent some time as a K-9 handler, and from being K-9, I was promoted to a supervisor up in North Caddo Parish. And that's where I was at as a sergeant when I left the job December 10th, 2018. So it's been on my heart since then. It's pretty much been a lifelong dream to be the Sheriff of Caddo Parish. I feel like the current sheriff, the Sheriff's office has kind of surpassed where he's at, and it's about time for a new sheriff, and I think it's time for a change, and I believe I would be that change that we need for the Sheriff's office in the community. Shared areas, it's difficult. Both Shreveport PD and the Sheriff's Office are short on manpower at the current time. We currently have a shared narcotics unit, which I believe we only have 2 people from the Sheriff's Office left working that with SPD. And we also have a shared white collar crimes investigation unit. That is all the Sheriff's Office shares. As the sheriff, you are the chief law enforcement officer of Caddo Parish. And Shreveport is a big part of Caddo Parish. And with that being said, Shreveport is an area of high crime and high problems within the parish that the sheriff's responsible for. So working with the city, possibly joining some units to have a patrol that would go out into the areas and interact with the public in a positive manner, and have good interaction and developing good relationships. We could do other units, investigations to join forces, and we would have to use less manpower to accomplish the same goals, and we wouldn't have to duplicate work because a lot of investigations are done by people who commit crimes and live outside the city. They commit crimes inside and outside the city as well. So that would keep from duplicating work. It would save on manpower, it would cut on expenses. Also, I know the government offers a lot of grants for multi-task force units, so that would be a benefit. We have a boat patrol, which has now been disbanded because we're so short on patrol that they've been disbanded and moved to patrol. I know Shreveport has a unit for boat patrol, so we could combine, and instead of having, if they had 5 people, we had 5 people, we could each combine 2 to 3 people and have a team and have extra people to put where they're needed. The biggest public safety issue to our community is the violence, that and domestic violence. As a matter of fact, 2017, we were ranked number 2 in domestic violence related homicides. And I'm a very big advocate for the domestic violence abuse and the changes we're making. We have Gwen's Law now. We currently do not have any kind of unit or task force that strictly works with domestic violence victims or the offenders. One of my things would be to form a task force with, say, the DA's office and the sheriff's office and SPD to help with women who are continually battered in a domestic violence incident, and then we arrest the offender and they go back to them, to try to help with those people to continue pursuing charges and getting those people in jail who are abusing them. The DA's office currently does have a special victims unit that does follow-ups, but there's not a unit with the sheriff's office that coordinates with them and where we do perform the same functions to assist. The opioid epidemic has created a new way for people to purchase drugs, which is online. So it's becoming a lot different type of job. People are sending money through PayPal and other ways to companies that are either in other states, out of the country. The stuff is getting shipped in through UPS, FedEx, the U.S. Postal Service. And then you do have some doctors who will prescribe opioids for people who pay the right money for them. So the biggest thing is we have to shift our efforts in the way we work in dealing with these types of drug issues. And since things go out of the state, we'd have to work with people like Customs and federal agencies because it goes across borders. So basically, we would have to change the way we do our job in order to handle the problem with opioids. Then you also have where people can get treatment, which we'd have to coordinate efforts with people like Caddo in order to get people treatment and help them get off of the opioids so they wouldn't keep repeating purchasing and abusing the opioids. I believe they've done some good things. We still have a high incarceration rate in Caddo Parish and in Louisiana. So we need to keep going in the direction that the Reform Act went. I do know we have a work release program that also is in other areas of the state, and the state participates in that. I know in 2011, the inmates or the inmate workers at work release, it was quoted as they made enough money to pay for the program, and they also made enough money to put $500,000 or $500,000 in the sheriff's office general budget or general fund. What monies of that was reinvested, I don't know. I do know that it could be reinvested back into programs. The other issue is the state auditor in 2016 did an audit, and one of the deficiencies in that program was, as I said, the sheriff's office got $500 million, but for the audit that the state auditor did, the state and the sheriff's offices and the contractors involved in a program earned $60 million in that program, and $4.1 million of that was just from selling commissary items to the inmates. The other problem was that the average inmate spent about $1,300 a year out of their funds for commissary. The other problem was that the inmates, once they left the program, only left 55% left with less than $1,000 in their savings account. So I'm thinking part of that $500 million could be given back to the inmate workers. So if they have families, children, that can go to help support them. So they're not needing to be on government support while the other party is in jail, and they're working, but they're not getting the money for it. So the other issue they came up with was in 2016 there were 254 escapes from the work release, and that's another issue that needs to be addressed. The Sheriff's Office already has some programs. One thing is to expand on the programs. The other thing is in 1996, I presented a program or a philosophy to the then Sheriff Don Hathaway, and it was based on community-oriented policing, which was actually the buzzword back then. And do that presentation, the sheriff decided that he wanted to adopt that philosophy, and they made me the first community liaison deputy in Caddo Parish. I went to many schools and learned about the philosophy and certain things we could do in interacting with the community and helping with the youth programs and adult programs, and finding out what each community needed or neighborhood needed due to the diversity and the different types of communities they were. I was never allowed to fully implement that. I wasn't given that freedom. So those things are what I call community outreach now, which is what I plan on doing as sheriff, is having officers again or deputies in the community, making positive interactions, non-law enforcement types contact, developing those relationships with the community, and finding out what the community needs and what the kids need. There's another thing that the juvenile court is doing with juveniles when they get entered in the juvenile system, and they're doing assessment on them, a needs assessment, and seeing what the juveniles need. What I would like to do is train the school resource officers, counselors, security coordinators, so when they start seeing these juveniles, children getting into trouble, we can go ahead and do the needs assessment then, because at this current point in time, they're not getting the needs assessment unless they get into juvenile detention, and that rarely ever happens. So once we do the needs assessment in the schools, then we will coordinate with the schools, churches, counselors, whoever we need to, and meet the needs of those juveniles and get them taken care of. I've tried to do some research on the budget of the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office, both the operation of the jail and the Sheriff's Office outside of corrections. I've had several CPAs look at it. It's been really difficult to decipher. I do know that the property values have been lowered in recent times, so I know the budget has been tight. The last years I was there, I know we were told the budget was tight, so there may not be enough money to be operating the way there is, but there are areas where money can be cut and we can budget, but those are things that would have to be looked at once in office. As I said, so I am like every other taxpayer. I don't want increased taxes, but I also know that people are willing to pay for something of value if they get their money's worth for it. And I will look at every aspect of what the budget is, what we absolutely need, where we can cut money, and I've been looking at alternative methods other than raising taxes in order to fund any shortage we may have. And one of the ways I want to get rid of it is us keeping inmates in jail to make money from the state, the federal government, and the parish, and the money from the work release inmates to put back into the budget to help make ends meet. I would look at whether it would be more of a benefit to bring the company in with a tax benefit, or if them paying the tax would be more of a benefit. There may be things, I don't know, I'd have to look at that ITP about if you can determine the amount of time that they're allowed to have that exemption. I do know the Sheriff's Office currently gives an exemption to companies or contractors who hire work release inmates, and that is an encouragement to them to hire these inmates into their program because they're saving a little bit of money on taxes. The overall process would just be giving this company a tax exemption to bring the company and the jobs into Caddo Parish, if that would be more of a benefit than not giving them the exemption. The biggest thing for them and the steps they need to take is when warnings are put out or information is put out, whether evacuations are requested or asked, that they need to follow the information they're given, instead of, if they're asked to stay in place or evacuate an area, then those are the things they need to do, not decide to do things on their own, because the people giving them the advice have dealt with this for years, and I know a lot of people don't want to leave their home in case of a fire or flood. They want to sit there with it, but then lives are endangered. That taxes the emergency services even more, because now we have to go rescue, save these people who have decided not to listen to the advice of the Homeland Security personnel. And just listen to what they say and follow the instructions. That would be a great benefit for everybody. Sure. You ready? Mm-hmm. The Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office is currently short on employees both in the jail and out in operations, being patrol, investigations, and other areas. They've had to disband special units to put them on patrol. They've had to pay deputies on patrol and in the jail to work overtime to cover the shifts that are short out there. We have people quitting regularly, and I know a lot of agencies are having the same problems with a shortage of personnel. The Sheriff's Office is losing people almost weekly. The people I've spoken with who have left, they cite working conditions, the politics at the Sheriff's Office, the way they're treated, not being properly trained to do their job, supervisors who don't understand the job and are hypercritical of them, constantly getting in trouble. So one of the issues we have is the deputies aren't being trained on how to run the jail properly, or the proper way to run the jail. So that's one issue we have to take, because they're having a hard time at the jail and they're wanting to leave. That's giving us a shortage at the jail, which in turn, that's where we pull personnel from to go to the other areas in operations. So if we have no people at the jail, we can't pull them to the other areas and they get short. We also have people who are quitting from other areas, going for other jobs, mostly for the same reasons. And we also have people who, the moment they can retire, rather than staying on drop and getting the extra money, they're retiring the minute they can retire for the same reasons. So that's one thing that needs to be addressed, is issues that are involving personnel.